Hello, everybody. This is Joseph P. Farrow with news and views from the Nefarium on Thursday, July 7th, 2016. The Nefarium is busy. Let's just put it that way. In the wake of the Brexit vote, or perhaps because of it and on the side so that nobody's looking, the Nefarium has been busy the past week. There's so many stories I wanted to talk about in this news and views from the Nefarium. I want to talk about the Bayer-Monsanto merger and some stories that you all have shared about their attempt now to go after marijuana. That's right, they're in the drug business. Surprise, surprise! They wanted they want to join the international mafia and corner the weed market, but there's other news, and it's of a geopolitical nature. Now, I've been watching Europe and the European Union, the Russian sanction story, the Ukrainian crisis, all of this, the refugee immigration crisis, the war on European culture that Mr. Global seems to be mounting. All of this has factored into my considerations, and I've been arguing for some time that the countries now to watch are shifting south. And one country in particular is very important to watch, and that's Italy. And here's why. Italy, of course, stands between Greece, which has had its problems under the EU. The EU has basically stripped Greece of its democracy. Greece is being run by a European Commission appointed troika. And watch Spain. All right. Smack dab in the middle of those two countries is, of course, the most powerful country in Southern Europe, and that's easily and by far and away Italy. So I've been saying watch Italy, because what the Italians do now in terms of the EU, in terms of Russian sanctions, and so on and so forth, is going to be very, very important. So I have three articles I want to share with you. Two of them are from Russia Today, believe it or not. So I went to the other extreme and found an article on Breitbart. Someone also sent me, actually about two or three people sent me this article from Breitbart as well. So I want to share these articles with you. The RT article I want to begin with is, quote, absolute blindness in the EU. Italy's wealthiest region urges lifting of Russia sanctions. This posted on July 5th. So in other words, these articles are after the Brexit vote, all right? Now listen to this. Quote, the Legislative Assembly of Italy's most populated and richest province, Lombardy, and be up around Turin and so on in northern Italy, took place on Tuesday with the initiative supported 43 out of 87 council members, with 15 others abstaining. It called for the establishment of a special committee to gather signatures to lift the sanctions in Russia. Now, this is significant. This is something going on in Italy on a regional basis. You have these movements in various Italian regions to put these petitions together and then pressure the national government from below, all right? The council members also demanded the Italian government condemn, quote, the EU's international policy toward the Crimea, unquote, which reunited with Russia in 2014 after having been a part of the Ukraine, and recognized the results of the referendum which led to the reunion. The regional government of Lombardy, headed by Roberto Maroni, supported the council's resolution. Resolution similar, listen to this now, this is very important, resolutions similar to the one in Lombardy were previously adopted in Italy's Veneto and Liguria provinces. Now, I'm going to skip toward the end of this article and read something else very important. The resolutions adopted across the country represent, quote, the will of all the Italian people that want to leave the sanctions against Russia and recognize the right to self-determination of the Crimea, unquote. That's quoting an Italian leader, Valda Gambari, and then Paolo Tosato, Italian senator and Lega Nord member, blamed the EU of, quote, short-sighted vision, unquote, due to their policies toward Russia. Now, you'll notice in Italy so far, this is expressing itself as a problem disinterest, dissatisfaction with Italian and EU policy towards Russia. And I've mentioned this before in the news and views and in some of the blogs. The Italians are doing very much the same thing that you see the Germans doing. Local or regional leaders have gone to Russia and basically gone behind the back of the central government and said, yeah, we're dissatisfied with these sanctions. Let's work something out. So in other words, the sanctions are having an effect, but not an effect on Russia as much as they are on Europe. So that's very important. So let's get to the second article here. And this one is now at the national level. This is again from RT. This was published on the 27th of June. So in other words, this is a few days after the Brexit vote, all right? This article is titled, Italian Senate Refuses to Back Automatic Renewal of Anti-Russian Sanctions. And I'm just going to read a few paragraphs from here so that you can see how this is also beginning to affect national politics in Italy. Quote, the upper house of the Italian parliament has adopted a resolution opposing the automatic renewal of anti-Russian sanctions. The text of the resolution, proposed by the opposition Northern League, or Lega Nord, was approved by the majority vote. The resolution lists a set of recommendations to the Italian government on key issues that will be raised at the EU summit on June 28th and 29th. Of course, we're past this by now. Among other things, it commits the government to, quote, argue that the sanctions against Russia will not be renewed automatically, unquote, according to the Italian Senate session records. Drafted by the deputy head of the Senate and the national coordinator of the Northern League, Roberto Calderoli, the resolution also mentions migrants and refugees issues as well as the situation around the UK leaving the EU following a referendum. So in other words, migrants, refugees, Russian sanctions. Think of all of this now. This is a revolt, essentially, against the central policy of the European Union, the European Commission, and more importantly, of France and Germany. Earlier, the Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi also raised his voice against the automatic renewal of the anti-Russian sanctions. In other words, if you impose it on the rest of Europe centrally without taking into consideration changes in policy, you're in danger of risking Italy, all right? And if Italy is key here, folks, for the European Union now and for its survival, because if Italy leaves, rest assured, Greece and Spain are going to leave, all right? So Italy is key. At the same time, the Senate did not approve a resolution proposed by the Northern League Senator Paolo Tosato, which took the issue a step further and urged the government to recognize the Crimea and push for the lifting of sanctions. Now, this article is very important because if you go down further in this RT article, you'll see a little link to an article that says Russia's ready to lift sanctions first if it is certain that Europe will follow suit. So in other words, Putin is now playing hardball and Europe is in a weakened position. Now, here's the article I really, really want to get to. This one is so important because this is the article that appeared in Breitbart. And again, it's citing what's going on in Italy. All right, and I'm going to read several passages of this article for you. The article's titled, Demands EU Reform, Warns Over Full Collapse. Italian ministers warned Saturday that the European Union must change direction. Listen carefully to this, folks, or risk collapse after Britain's vote to leave the bloc. Quote, the unthinkable is happening, unquote, Finance Minister Pier Carlo Padoan said. Quote, a double reaction to Brexit is underway, one financial, one political. The financial one, at least until now, is limited. I am more worried about the political one. There is a cocktail of factors that can lead to various outcomes, including a further push towards disintegration, unquote. Speaking to Corriere della Sera, Padoan also said the EU leaders had to understand there could be no more business as usual on the key issues of jobs, growth, and immigration. Now, please understand, this is an Italian that's in favor of the EU. This is the Italian upper crust of the Italian political elite, all right? You've seen the local revolts in Italy against the EU. That's going to spread, folks, unless there's drastic sweeping changes in EU policy. In other words, in the policy coming out of Paris and Berlin once again, all right? Now, let me skip further down in this article and point out a couple of other passages. Quote, the risk of political contagion is such that we need to send a strong and clear message that we are revamping the European project, unquote. Padoan said Europe had to face up to citizens' worries over immigration, unemployment, and increasing inequality, which meant changing the austerity budget rules Rome blames for exacerbating the current crisis. Inequality is growing in Europe because growth is weak. Italy respects the deficit rules, but that does not mean we like them. And then finally, further down, we have had proposals on the table for months that say employment, growth, well-being, and equality have to be the priorities. Europe can not only take care of the banks. We are still stabilizing them and will continue to do so, but we also have to look after our citizens, unquote. Now, folks, this is about as strong as you can get from someone that's in the political elite in Europe that is saying that you need to change the whole project. He's only a hair's breadth away from saying you need to change the institutions of the EU and allow a genuinely democratic parliamentary procedure so that the voices of Europeans, of Italians, of Frenchmen, of Germans, of Austrians, and so on can have a genuine representation. And note something, in the Italian case, you're dealing with someone that clearly has coupled the austerity economic measures and the refugee crisis, the political destabilization of Europe. In other words, the Italian message now, please understand this, this is so crucial. The Italian message to the European Union is a message that the total project and the total policy is wrong and has to be changed. Now, it's going to be interesting to see whether or not Europe can indeed do that, and indeed if Paris and Berlin will let them do it, all right? Ultimately, this is coming down to a contest of Northern Europe, Germany, and so on, versus Southern Europe, Italy, Spain, and Greece. But the problem here now is Italy carries a lot more weight than Greece or Spain does. And when Italy starts saying these things, then there is indeed trouble in the works. Now, what's going to happen? What's my prediction? Pardon me. I suspect that the European Union and its elite, which is totally oligarchical, it has no real understanding or even love for European culture, for local traditions, and so on. I suspect that they're going to offer paper reforms, and I suspect that this is not going to play well, not only in Italy, but more importantly in the regions of Italy that are pressuring the national government in this fashion. So I expect that ultimately Italy might be in a position to negotiate a different type of presence in the European Union. And it might even resemble that the British had in some respects prior to their Brexit referendum. And of course, that won't work. So I think the danger here that we're looking at the breakup of the European Union is very real. And quite frankly, I wouldn't be all that disappointed to see that happen. It's an unwieldy, unmanageable, centralized structure, and centralization, like it or not, folks, historically just does not work. Italy is now in a very unique and, in a certain sense, strong position vis-a-vis the EU, that it might be able to drive through some of these reforms, and watch for something now to start happening. I think what you're going to see is the emergence now within the European Union of sub-blocks. Italy, Spain, Portugal, and Greece, I expect eventually are going to start holding meetings together and presenting their case as a bloc to the EU. I suspect you're going to see the same thing between France and Belgium, and then you're going to see the same thing with Germany, Austria, the Netherlands, Denmark, and so on. And watch the exit votes in those countries. There are movements for exit from the EU growing and bubbling in those countries, and they're going to be putting tremendous pressure, as well as those movements of local parliaments, states, lender, and so on, provinces, to end these Russian sanctions. So this is a very, very interesting time. Italy is now center stage in Europe. Watch it very, very carefully. That's it for my news and views this week, folks. I'll see everybody on the flip side. Bye-bye and God bless.